The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, episode 137.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today now that the third season of Discovery is over, we're returning to our discussion of the various series that have already existed. And this time we're discussing the Voyager episode, Heroes and Demons, or as I like to call it, Beowulf in Space. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, remember to like The Secrets of Star Trek on our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, and be sure to retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and leave us replies and comments and your various responses in those places. So I want to start by talking a little bit about the background of this episode. It's written by Naren Shankar, who was a staff writer for both Next Gen and DS9, but was not on the staff for Voyager. For this, he was a freelancer by this point. But he knew Star Trek. He'd been writing it for a while. And he said that, as he talked about this in interviews, the premise, the original idea was the premise of people disappearing from the holodeck and the Doctor having to go in and save them because of his unique nature as a holographic character. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea of the Viking setting and all that came later. And he chose that because Star Trek hadn't really touched on Vikings at all. This was the first Viking episode.
Or beekeepers.
Right. Well, we haven't done beekeepers, whereas the Doctor Who has done beekeepers. Now, of course, as we talk about this we're talking about this in 2020, but as you hear this in 2021, Vikings are big. It's like thanks to the History Channel show, and there are lots of Viking shows. But this is actually kind of funny because when this aired in 1995, Vikings were not the phenomenon that they are now. And another thing that kind of struck me was the repetitive nature of the encounters they have on the holodeck are clearly influenced by early role-playing games, like video role-playing games, because you have the repetition of the same dialogue and back and forth.
Variations of it. It's not exactly the same. So the program's clearly adjusting, but running through the same scenario.
Right.
Which will have an interesting implication at one point.
Yes. There are several Beowulf in-jokes, according to Shankar, who said he was surprised that no one on staff had read Beowulf before and thus didn't get it when he put them in. So that's some interesting. Well, there's some more tidbits that'll come up as we go through, but those are the ones I wanted to throw out there first. So it starts with Voyager is apparently investigating photonic activity in a nearby protostar, at which point I said, you mean it's giving off light?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what photonic activity is light.
But this is special photonic energy that's different light.
It's also somehow photonic matter.
Yes. And so they're beaming some of the stuff on board.
And it's
engineering.
clear as soon as they're beaming them into these little canisters, and it's like, okay, that's obviously a life form in there.
Yeah.
Like, is this your first?
Right out of the gate, we know this episode is going to be about, before they even say anything, just the special effects tell us this is going to be about encountering beings made of light.
Yes. Like, this is not a new idea in Star Trek. And I was like, is this your first day in Starfleet, Captain? Like, this has been a fairly common thing.
One of my first notes was, this is yet another Strange Particles Are Really Alive episode.
Yes. Right. So they beam him 2 samples, for some reason, plot reasons, into 2 sample containers, but only one of the sample containers makes it. The other one sort of disappears in the system somewhere. And they seem apparently unconcerned by this, and so just beam some more in. Janeway wants Torres's analysis to go quicker, because Torres says it's going to take, X hours, and Janeway says, I don't have time for that. Let's get Harry Kim. He's got his day off, but, we'll call him back from his... Rope him in, because I'm sure Harry will love that, come in on your day off. And but when she tries to call him, the computer says he's not on the ship. And
so it's yet another Harry Kim is mysteriously not on the ship episode. That keeps happening.
If I were Garrett Wang, I'd be like, "Are you guys trying to get rid of me? Like, because you keep having me disappear."
They sort of were. He was. He I mean, they weren't going to fire him, but he
wasn't doing great.
He had a reputation for not showing up on time and knowing his lines.
Oops.
Yeah. So he's not at all in this episode until the very last scene, by the way.
He gets one line.
He gets one line, so he gets residuals.
That's right. Hey, if you get paid, you get paid. So Harry was supposed to be on the holodeck, and so when they scan it, something is wrong, of course. And they
so,
can't shut down the program.
Of course, so it's yet another holodeck malfunction episode. We got a lot of these yet another episodes lining up on this one.
Really have the tropes piling up here. Yeah.
So Chakotay and Tuvok go in to investigate, and I think at some point Tuvok will warn things don't seem to be working, so we have to be aware that the safety protocols might be off. Because, again, I'm going to point out again how dumb an idea it is that you can actually turn the safety protocols off.
Yeah, it should be like the program automatically shuts down when that kind of system error is detected.
Right. So the program that's running is a holonovel about Beowulf, and we get a brief description of Beowulf for the sake of the audience and the Vulcan, who apparently is not well read on human literature. They encounter Freya, a shield maiden.
Marjorie Monaghan, yay!
Yeah.
Number 1 from Babylon 5.
Oh.
In a pre-number 1 role. I like Marjorie Monaghan. She's great.
Oh, yeah.
That's where she looks familiar from. Okay. So she's challenges them. When they realize they can't delete her from the program, that's when they assume that safety protocols must be down. And they find out that Harry was playing as Beowulf. Like, who else would he be playing as? Like, if you're in a novel about Beowulf, what are you going to be, like some minor character?
In the third Beowulf story, there is a kind of sidekick that Beowulf has, but
I suppose. So he was Beowulf. Freya says he's dead, and she thinks that they must be Beowulf's kinsmen. They meet King Hrothgar in his mead hall. He tells them that Harry was killed by Grendel. Grendel is the big villain in Beowulf, the monster.
The monster.
Yep. Tuvok and Chakotay want to see Grendel because they assume that has something to do with why Harry is missing. So they will stand watch that night. And as they do, they're going to try to repair the holodeck using the control panels that are inside holodecks for some reason.
They're also talking to Janeway and Torres on the phone, and it turns out the photonic energy that they beamed in has caused a problem and has gotten into other systems too. And I like how Janeway lectures Torres on how holodecks are basically an outgrowth of transporter technology, as if your chief engineer didn't know that.
Right. There is an interesting little interplay between Tuvok and Chakotay here, where Chakotay talks to Tuvok about how monsters and demons help different cultures on Earth deal with their darkest emotions and fears through heroic literature. Mm-hmm. And then Tuvok says only unduly emotional cultures need such fables, pointing out there are no demons in Vulcan literature. And Chakotay says, yeah, that must be why it's so popular.
Yeah,
that's a great one-liner.
I like that. Also, it's like, you don't have demons. You've got Salats and Lamachas on Vulcan.
Yeah, you don't need fake monsters. You got real ones. Tuvok, by the way, thinks that Harry might have been converted into energy somehow.
Again, isn't that called a transporter?
Well, I was going to say, if you have a universe that has functional transporters, you have to allow for this idea that people can become energy and survive as pure energy and being reconstituted again. Like we saw that in the TNG episode we did. What was that one called?
The one where the transporter malfunctioned. Yeah.
Yes. The one where the transporter. And Picard ended up as an energy being for a while. You just have to allow for it, I suppose.
And that the funny part is it's always been one of those questions in my mind. If the holodeck basically works as a transporter in reverse, taking energy to make matter and turning it back to energy, couldn't there be a glitch that, say, matter that walked into the transporter room becomes, or the holodeck room becomes energy? Well, yeah, we just see it right now.
Well, that's why you have safety protocols that can't be turned off.
Yeah, unless the power's low on the ship, like say in lower decks, and it disables non-essential functions like safety protocols.
Or you're a Klingon who wants to have really challenging workouts.
Yeah.
By the way, the episode you were thinking of is Lonely Among Us.
That's right. That's it. Lonely Among Us. So Grendel approaches the mead hall and looks a lot like that photonic energy that Torres was working on in engineering. I wonder if they're related to anything. And then when Grendel comes in, Tuvok and Chakotay are gone. We hear it from Janeway's perspective on the bridge, where she's calling them and they're not responding, and we are told they're not there anymore. And that's when Paris shows up from wherever he was, and it's very interesting. Like, Paris has very little role in this episode, but he's apparently the one who's not willing to give up on the three officers. And he's the one that comes up with the idea that the Doctor might be able to survive Grendel's attack. And I'm like, is this because the actor, for Paris, didn't have anything else to do in this episode? We had to make sure that we had him in it?
That tends to happen. I mean, the writers know that if a character doesn't appear and get dialogue in an episode, they're not going to get paid the same.
Yes.
So, and this is something that actually, over on Babylon 5, Bill Mumy, who's been working in the business since he was a little kid,
literally,
as a veteran of Hollywood television acting, was pointing out to some of his castmates who were complaining about, I only get one line in this episode, and Bill Mumy is like, that means you get paid. The writers, you didn't have to be, because they're complaining, like, I get one line, I don't even need to be in this episode. And he's going, yeah, you're right, you don't need to be in this episode. The writer has put you in this episode and given you this line, so you will get residuals for it.
Yep. I was going to say, it does kind of fit Tom Paris's character, at least as they kind of develop it, because we do see him doing a lot of development of holodeck novels and the pool hall in France that he builds. And so it does kind of fit that he understands the holodeck side of it anyways.
That's true.
And he's friends with Harry Kim, so it makes sense. He's friends with
Harry Kim, which of course makes sense too.
Yeah. So he reasons that the Doctor can't be converted into energy like the other three officers were, because he's already energy, and therefore he'll probably be safe or safer.
Well,
I'm not sure that logic.
He could be depatterned, but then we just reboot him.
Right.
But these are Starfleet computers that you can't have more than one copy of anything, and if the original copy's lost, it's gone. And
I do want to mention, by the way, kind of jumping back, King Hrothgar was played by the actor Michael Keenan, who also plays Patrick, one of the genetically altered folks in DS9.
Oh, wow.
Same actor. Yeah. He died.
Okay, the older one.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. And he died earlier this year, April 30th. I mean, earlier last year, April 30th in 2020. So, so rest his soul. But, and he's also in Sub Rosa, which there's no more mention. We do not need to talk about that anymore. We'll get to that soon enough. So this is going to be the Doctor's first trip outside of sickbay on Voyager. He's never remember, he doesn't have that futuristic 30th century portable holo emitter. So he's going to be able to leave sickbay for the first time. They're going to give him control of his program to either be solid or let other things pass through him, so that for a sort of a safety thing. But that is obviously at some point he won't be able to. Yeah. Kes then talks with the Doctor about how he's nervous about the mission.
This is great.
This nice Kes thing.
She encourages him to pick a name for himself finally.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad they eventually dropped this. And it's like, okay, we've proven for over 60 years now, you can have a character who's just called the Doctor and even build a whole show around him. You don't need a name.
Right.
And so I'm glad they dropped this, but he says that he's thought of 3 names that he might pick. And Kes says, well, before you go to the holodeck, why don't you pick one? So, you'll feel more like a Starfleet officer, and so we'll all know what to call you after you're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't just have to put EMH on the tombstone.
That's right. He's wearing a blue shirt, blue uniform, so he doesn't have to worry about it.
So after being transferred to the holodeck, the Doctor, like, there's this nice little moment where he seems taken with the idea of being in this new environment outside of sick bay.
He touches a tree for the first time, and there's this moment on Robert Picardo's face. It's a really nice moment, and it also made me wonder, wow, there is a lot of Spanish moss in Denmark. Hanging on those trees.
And then he encounters Freya again, and he tells her his name. He is Schweitzer. Yeah, he's named for Dr. Albert Schweitzer.
And Freya says a warrior's name, and I'm going, really? In German, Schweitzer means either a doorman or a person who milks livestock.
Although it will lead to a great moment at the at the end of one of the acts where the all of the Vikings are chanting Schweitzer, Schweitzer, Schweitzer. It's a very bizarre moment, but it's good. On their way to the mead hall, Freya spots a fungus that she collects, and she says that they brew it into tea before battle, and it gives them the spirit of the bear. And the Doctor says it's poisonous, and it will kill you.
And so this is a real thing. I mean, we talked about this in the episode of Mysterious World on werewolves.
Yep.
That, you do have these psychoactive substances that Vikings would use and, various warrior peoples would use before battle. But the particular fungus that he names, Amanita muscaria, it's not what they're holding in their hands. What they're holding is, I don't know, it looks like what you'd pick up down at the Chinese market, but it is not Amanita muscaria. Amanita muscaria is it's like the most famous mushroom in the world. It's the one with the red cap and the little white spots.
Yes.
It's the Mario Brothers mushroom.
Right. Exactly. I don't know why, why they wouldn't get, anyway, never mind. Just why they wouldn't just get a prop that looks like that, but whatever.
Because they went down to the Chinese market and bought the mushrooms there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Also, yeah. So, well.
Those it does not kill, it makes strong, is what Freya says. And he's like, yeah. And then she says, oh, you must be a master of herb lore. And she says, Freya says, you are truly a man of many talents, Lord Schweitzer. Your people must value you greatly. And he says, you'd think so.
Yeah.
I do like Robert Picardo really carries the humor, like with that sardonic humor that the Doctor becomes famous for.
He's such a good actor in these sarcastic humor type characters. I mean, he really plays that role so well. So he fits this perfectly.
Yeah, I really do like Robert Picardo, and I do think he really develops. He takes what he's given with the Doctor, and he really does something with it over the course of the series, and I do appreciate that.
Well, he's the breakout character. The producers thought Neelix was going to be the breakout character, like Quark was, so he's kind of a low budget Quark. But it was really the Doctor that was the breakout character.
Well, the problem Neelix was just annoying.
Well, it just goes to show how the producers so often don't actually know what people want to see in their shows. Yeah. That what is going to work. It's just kind of funny. So they encounter the king in this mead hall and his chief warrior, Unferth, and that goes not exactly, but mostly the same as with Tugok and Chakotay. Unferth is suspicious and angry. This time he lets Unferth attack him, and he strikes him with the blade, but it goes right through him to the delight of the Vikings.
Yeah, and notice that he's got Paris had beamed in a tricorder for him to use, and he's got the tricorder on his hip. So he's apparently selectively immaterial. He lets the center part of his body become immaterial so the sword can pass through him, but apparently his hip and his leg is still material, so the tricorder doesn't fall to the floor.
Right. And then after that, this is when we get the Schweitzer. The Vikings love that he survives that.
Yeah. Then a couple of notes here. So one of them is the characters, and even before we get to the Schweitzer moment, we have various characters, and we see this in other holodeck stories where someone's playing a holonovel, where the characters in the novel are like sucking up to the player.
Yeah.
And making the player seem like, oh, you're so important and stuff. And I hate that.
Yeah.
It's I don't like novels where the minor characters are sucking up to the protagonist.
Well,
I would not want that in a holonovel. That is bad writing.
Well, to be fair, as Dom pointed out, this very much is like the old school, like graphical RPGs and like the Ultima series and things like that, where you're the most important person ever because you're going to be the avatar of Ultima or something, you know.
Right.
So
that's true.
It actually does fit the genre that the holonovel is supposed to be.
Yeah, well, that's
it's pulp holonovel.
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't like it. I mean, if you have, so this is one of the problems with Harry Potter, in my view. I read the first Harry Potter book because I had to for apologetic purposes, and it screams from the opening pages, Harry is the most important person in the world in this
Literally,
and yeah,
yeah.
And it is, it's like, no, this has to be earned. You cannot just, it's bad writing to just have someone, oh, this is the child of promise that is clearly the most important thing ever. It's just, I could go on about why it's so bad, but it's really bad. Right. By comparison, Jerry Pournelle's novel, Starswarm, is almost, in certain ways, it's like a sci-fi mirror image of Harry Potter. You have the same core dynamic. You've got the little boy who's lost his parents. He's got one friend who's a girl. He's got another friend who's a boy. And he's the most important person in the world. But he doesn't know it. And he grows into this role, and you gradually find out why he's so important. And even he doesn't realize what's going on with him. And it is so vastly more satisfying to have this earned character importance that's slowly revealed rather than just being told it from the first page. And so this kind of writing annoys me, including here in these holonovels. Another thing that annoys me is the ridiculous, stupid Starfleet woke anachronisms, because Freya, at one point, she says to like Chakotay and Tuvok that she'll see them in the morning, fate willing, and then she says to the Doctor, "Fate be with you." And it's like, come on, Beowulf is an explicitly Christian tale.
Yes. Right.
She would have said, "God willing," and "God be with you," and it's the ridiculous, stupid Star Trek political correctness that is causing these anachronisms to be put into her mouth. You're betraying your source material. If you want to do Beowulf and let people experience it.
Right. Like, who are you offending? Like, by just, that's in the material. It's in the original. Like, just say it. Like, just if you say God be with you, why would that, like, even back in the 90s, they were doing this. It's just so ridiculous. Yeah. You know, when you're talking about Harry Potter, I was thinking, like, Ender's Game is a kind of, like, Harry Potter is kind of a magical realism version of Ender's Game. But Ender's Game, again, Ender is
He's
not...
he doesn't even realize till the end what was going on.
Right. He is the most important person in the world, and they are rigorously keeping this a secret from him.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I agree. Sorry, that's a very interesting topic for another podcast, but it's a good tangent. So anyway, we come back from the commercial break apparently at this point, and the Doctor is now feasting on a big elk haunch and is asked to tell a tale of his prowess in battle. So he tells him about fighting an outbreak of measles, which disgusts Unferth, who's like thinks this is a stupid thing.
No, it wasn't just measles; it was space measles.
Right. Some like alien name measles. He gets a tour of the hall from Hrothgar, who tells him of his first kill at age 11. You know, relates the sad story that the hall was once beautiful, but it will be again when the Doctor kills Grendel. Freya talks about how the hope among her people has been lost, and she asks him, "Do you know what it is to be alone among many and unable to speak your fears?" And the Doctor says, "Yes, I do." And this is the weakest part of the Doctor's character development in this episode. Really, this whole like, they treat me like a hologram, and it's I'm alone among this Starfleet crew of real people. You know, I'm not just Pinocchio. I'm a real boy, and I'm like, but you are a hologram. But okay.
And then Freya puts the moves on him.
She offers to keep him warm.
She tells him, "My bed is right over there."
Yes.
she like kisses him and stuff, and he's not following up on her advances, but she leaves it open. And this is the point where the fact this scenario is playing out again becomes relevant, because Harry Kim as Beowulf the first time through was at this moment in this program. And he may have made different choices than the Doctor is.
Well, we saw the result of that on Lower Decks and what has to happen on a regular basis in the holodeck.
Well, also, we saw it recently on Deep Space Nine in the Move Along Home episode, where after Quark has gotten caught cheating the forehead writing people at Dabo, he offers them a free stay in a holosuite and says, "Do you know what a holosuite is? Do you have sex in your culture?"
So, we didn't mention at the time when we talk about that, but that really draws a line about what Quark's holosuites are all about. They're not like Starfleet holodecks.
They do eventually change that. They do retcon it so that it's basically a holodeck, but it's in quarks instead of on a starship. But
which is ew. So after she leaves, Grendel shows up, and we are told it's some kind of photonic energy formation. Just say some photonic energy.
Had that in my notes. Yep, some kind of photonic energy.
That's not the only some
formation.
kind of, some sort of. So we got a couple more coming
I've
up.
got them all here, so I'll let you know. It grabs his arm, and as they emergency transfer him back to the sick bay, he's minus an arm. This is actually an in-joke, one of the Beowulf in-jokes. In the actual Beowulf, it was Grendel who lost an arm to Beowulf.
Right.
But in this one, Beowulf, quote-unquote, loses his arm to Grendel. So little joke there. Luckily, they are able to restore it, because he is, after all, just a program. And Torres says, there appears to be synaptic patterns in my readings of Grendel. Oh, gee, you think maybe it might be intelligent?
Oh,
come on!
This is ridiculous, because they've detected synaptic patterns, and the other life form they've got in the bottle now escapes, and they're detecting these synaptic patterns, and we're told, quote, those synaptic patterns could be some kind of neural net. And it's like, do you know what synapses are?
Right.
Synapses form neural nets. So
yes.
What is the problem here? I mean, this is supposed to be... We know this even in primitive human 21st century science. What's the problem?
Right. Like, if it's a synaptic pattern, it's a neural net. But that's the next some kind.
Also, even we in the lowly 21st century know that if you've got a problematic space like your malfunctioning holodeck, send in a bunch of drones.
Right. Yes. Which in Discovery they probably would do, because Discovery has drones by now, as we see. So the photonic being escapes out through the whole hull, apparently literally cutting through the ship to get there. Like it punches a hole right through the ship from engineering.
And they got to use a force field to seal the hole.
Yep.
And it looks, by the way, it's a little glowing octopus-looking thing. It's kind of like a baby Vorlon.
Yes.
And then once it gets out into space, it opens a jump gate and goes inside it.
Yes, a big ball of light.
It goes into some kind of photonic lattice.
Yeah.
Yes, some kind of. It's a photonic lattice. Just say it. Like, why do they all do this? Why do they do that? Anyway, they detect 3 readings from the lattice, some bio readings that could be the missing crew, you think. Janeway thinks that the photonic creatures were retaliating against the kidnapping of their own people, which seems a bit of a stretch, but okay. But she's making a little jump here.
For reasons she's right.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So they decided to make a peace offering. The Doctor is going to take the last sample back to the holodeck to release it to Grendel, but which I say, well, why not just go to the hangar deck and open the thing and let it float out into space? Is that not?
I think by giving it to the Grendel thing that's been taking it, they're trying to underscore the connection. You've been taking our people through the Grendel thing. We're giving you yours back through the Grendel thing.
Okay. So you can't just have a simple resolution, of course. You need to have something that impedes the moment of climactic resolution. Mm-hmm. So he encounters Freya again, and then Unferth shows up to stop them, accusing the Doctor of being in league with Grendel.
And then Unferth slaps him with a sword.
Yes.
It is a slap. And
Yes.
and then when Freya defends him, we have a scene involving hand biting and face pushing, which is just what I want to see in a sword fight.
Yeah, that's right. It is a lame sword fight. But Freya defends the Doctor and ends up getting killed. And Unferth runs off with a photonic being while the Doctor is mourning the apparent death of the holonovel character who will be reset as soon as the holodeck is under control again. He has fallen in love with her.
As she's there dying, and she's, I'm going to die with your name on my lips, Schweitzer.
Yes.
He's like it's like, Doc, you're spending way too much time playing and
Yes.
not enough mission performing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got a mission to perform here. You can play this holonovel if you want later.
Yeah, right. And apparently she's dying from a shoulder wound. She's been stabbed in the shoulder and is dying from it. This peripheral wound. He confronts Unferth in the mead hall, and he tells him the only reason he won't die today is because the Doctor has taken an oath to do no harm, which is why he grabbed a sword and chased after Unferth. But
also, we have he was told right before he went into the holodeck that if he's going to hold the container with the baby Vorlon, he's going to have to stay solid.
Yes,
and it's like, well, he could selectively make his body unsolid earlier. He could keep his hand solid.
Right, just like before the tricorder. So he calls Grendel, releases the creature, asks it to return the crew, which it does. And afterward, the Doctor and Janeway talk about first contact, and she's going to give him a commendation. So she's going to she starts treating him like a real member of the crew, and she wants to put a name on the commendation. And he's decided not to keep the name Schweitzer because the last time he heard it was a painful moment, and he will never take a name again. Like you said, they dropped this idea eventually. I mean, it comes up
good
once in a while. And in fact, when they see the time travel one where they see the future after they've returned home, he has a name there when he's also married to a person.
Yeah.
But
and
in general,
some really common name too, like Smith or something like that.
Bob.
Bob. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bob. Hi, Bob. And then that's where we end things.
Yeah, although Janeway says, something tells me this won't be the last time you get out of the sick bay, and he says, something tells me that too, and I'm going, yeah, duh, that's the obvious progression. Thank you for hanging 2 lanterns on it in the same scene.
Yes, we'll be coming back. So one last thing I want to say about this, and then I'll get your last notes, but before this story, the Doctor, and this is the 11th story of the first season, the Doctor had been kind of a blank slate as a character. He had some moments, but there wasn't much there. But this episode does open up all the possibilities for the character. This is where the Doctor's character really gets its real beginning as a source of story and plot for the future. So that's one thing that makes this episode notable.
Right.
Father, any other notes, Father Cory?
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of this episode, but the issues, with the development of the Doctor is about the only thing I really like about this episode, to be honest.
Yeah.
I will say though that the EMH had more first contacts than USS Cerritos, so that's saying something.
True. Jimmy?
I don't have any other notes really, although something just occurred to me. Now, I tend to rag on bad writing, and particularly on Voyager. But one thing I will give them credit for, the way they have the Doctor written as an EMH, especially in the beginning, but it continues throughout, is actually really good. Whenever he is activated, the first thing he says is, "Please state the nature of the medical emergency," and that's good. I have had the experience. This was a couple years ago. I was at a dance, and I was dancing as part of it, and I realized all of a sudden something has happened, and an older member of the club had just suffered cardiac arrest, as he was dancing. And we sprang into action as a group. There were nurses there who immediately began working on him. I was the president of the club, I got on the phone immediately to 911, and I ran to the office of the facility where we were at, where they had a defibrillator. And we got the defibrillator, and we brought it back and hooked it up to him, and it would monitor. You have these defibrillators now. It's like an EMH. You put the sensors on the person's chest, and it detects their heart rhythm and determines whether or not to give a shock and what kind of shock to give, and it does it. And it'll give instructions to the people who are surrounding there, like if you need to do CPR, it will say, give breath now, and you breathe into the person's mouth, and it'll say pump the chest now, and it walks you through the process.
Yep.
And so it's like an EMH. But what struck me was when I got on the phone to 911, I expected some kind of Voyager-like efficiency. Please state the nature of the emergency.
Yeah. Right.
And that wasn't there. It was the 911 operators were much more fumbling around what was happening. I expected them to have like a clean, crisp, efficient script that they would walk the person on the other end of the phone through, and they didn't. I had to take the initiative and say, here's what's going on.
Interesting.
By the way, we saved the guy's life. We kept him alive long enough for the real first responders to get there. And so we saved his life that night as a group. But it was fascinating to me working with a sort of generation one, emergency medical robot, and also working with an emergency service telephonically and talking to it in that way, and noting the differences from Voyager.
And by the way, this is a good time to kind of make that PSA. If your business, if your church, if your school doesn't have AEDs, the automatic defibrillators, that might be something worth donating, especially like to a church or something, to have available, even if it's just sitting in an office somewhere, just to have that available, because stuff like this does happen in those kind of places. So
yeah, that's a good point. Excellent point. I do like the idea that that's built into the character of the Doctor, is that efficiency that he's created for this purpose, and that would be. I mean, it's a logical character to have if you have that good of holodeck technology. Yeah. So that was one of the things I liked about Voyager.
It is kind of funny though, because one of the big complaints for the Doctor by the Voyager crew was he doesn't have much of a bedside manner. He's not programmed to have a bedside manner. The only time the EMH is supposed to be active is there's an emergency, and bedside manner doesn't matter at that point.
Right. Your chief medical officer, your medical staff is unavailable or overworked or dead.
Or dead because you're in the Delta Quadrant. And no.
Yes. When you're in deep space, you're far away from, it's weeks away from anywhere. This sort of thing makes sense. I like that they've done this. I wonder if we'll ever see an EMH on like Discovery. That would be interesting. Saying all this after the third season of Discovery, but we haven't seen it yet. So just so you know.
Yeah.
All right. Let's I think that should do it. We should wrap things up there. Let's take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek, including Christopher H., Joe J., Jimmy D., Megs G., and Father Dean. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who once again is editing the show for us every week. So that's it from us. What did you think of Heroes and Demons or Beowulf in Space? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Enterprise episode, Silent Enemy. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Tom, and live long and prosper.
And Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember,